Welcome everyone to the 9 p.m. presentation. This is counter lobbying in the EU Parliament. Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone, thanks for coming. Hope you're safe, hope you're having a wonderful time. Please, if you bring in food or drink, remove the container to the back of the room. There are garbage cans and recycling at the end of the evening. Also, I remind you, if you have a question, please walk up to the microphone, or if you gesture, I can run around with the microphone to you. But it's good to have the questions into the microphone. That way they are preserved for the recording, and they also go out on the live stream that we're broadcasting. So as I said, counter lobbying in the EU Parliament. This is Christian Balz Mogis from Germany and Jeremy Zimmerman. I already forgot.
La Quadrature du Net.
From France. Welcome.
Yes, we are very happy to be here and being invited to give the talk.
There is a nasty feedback loop.
Yes. Actually, this guy should be giving this talk. He's quite busy and not really available for giving talk. This is Joe McNamee of EDRI, European Digital Rights.
Which has an office in Brussels, and actually he does a lot of work in the European Parliament and stops the EU Parliament from doing nasty mistakes. So if you see him in the news, he's doing most of the work of EDRI in Brussels, and really he should be giving the talk. But he can't, so we try to compensate for that. Well, a little nag, if you want to support EDRI is open for sponsoring, and we will give that address after the talk again. So, in the EU Parliament, since the Lisbon Treaty, the Parliament is involved in the decision about directives that will become law in the European Union. Usually the Commission does start a lawmaking process, then the EU Parliament gives input, which then goes to the EU Council for confirmation, and if there is more discussion to be done, then this process reiterates. It's called the co-decision process. Well, it has a first reading with the proposal of the directive and then all the stuff that happens. And if it doesn't work out in the first time, there's a secondary reading in European Parliament. And if that doesn't work out, there's a third reading. And if that doesn't work out, then the directive doesn't happen. With regard to blocking, we are still in the first reading. In March 2010, Ms. Malmström proposed the Child Exploitation Directive, which wanted to introduce blocking as a measure to fight child abuse material on the internet. It was on 25th of March in 2010. So with that proposal, then there was some, like 6 weeks it is, where member states have time to react on the Commission's proposal. For some reason, no member state said that, well, compulsory blocking isn't anything we want to do, which made us start the lobbying in the European Parliament, where we try to persuade the parliamentarians that blocking for fighting child abuse material on the internet is a bad idea for all the several reasons that there are. So in the European Parliament, then this directive goes into committees. With the Child Exploitation Directive, these are 3 committees. This is a Culture Committee, the Gender Equality Committee, and then you have the Civil Liberties and Home Office, or not interior stuff, like committee. What is it's the complete name?
I don't know which one is it.
Civil Liberties.
The Libe Committee.
Yes, it has more than just liberties. Actually, Civil Liberty Committees is the committee that is working on limiting our liberties. In our directive, the Child Exploitation Directive, the Civil Liberty Committee is where most of the work happens. And this is actually where all the action has been now, because the civil liberty committees went into talks with the council, with the EU member states, where they decided on a compromise for a common position that the European Parliament will reach after the first reading.
What I'm thinking at this stage, hello, I'll make a quick introduction as well. I'm Jeremy Zimmerman from La Quadrature du Net. I didn't participate as much as Christian in this specific fight of the internet blocking on the European level. We had the case in France, so I'm familiar with the case, but I'll mostly complement his comments by general comments on campaigning in the European Parliament. For those of you who don't know La Quadrature du Net, we are a kind of citizen toolbox. We're providing tools for citizens to understand what's going on when our civil liberties are attacked, and tools for everybody to participate. So through our experience with the European Parliament, we got to move through approximately any of those stages of what can be the legislative process in the EU, and on several levels, whether with the legal analysis of some directives that were about to be adopted, or some evil amendments or things like that, to the political layers where you try to make the situation change and really obtain a result somewhere. So Christian will update you about the very content of the directive, where it is now, what is going to happen, and I hope we'll interact on how to get there, how to campaign to obtain results. In this case of the, I don't even dare to call it child protection directive, because it's really, well, maybe it contains some other good things.
Well, it's a child exploitation directive.
So, yeah, I hope it will work out this way, and also that we can open the floor quite early so we can have a discussion about how to act on the EU level.
Okay. What is most important to understand is that for like changing the course of the directive, probably the only point for us as citizens of the European Union is the European Parliament. It's very difficult to have any influence on the Council, and it's quite illusory to assume that you have any effect on the Commission.
Excuse me, can you reduce the sound of this? I think it causes the feedback in most parts, please. This? Thank you. Maybe a bit more. No. Oh.
So what is important to know, as I said, is that like a few committees, usually if there's a directive, there are a few committees involved. It doesn't help if we contact every parliamentarian of the EU Parliament. We have to get in touch with the people doing the decision making on a certain directive. So for a directive that is being proposed, then the committees that are involved decide who will be the rapporteur in that committee for that directive, like who will be in charge of the progress of that directive in that committee. So you have, for each of the three committees, you have one person being in charge. And in the Libe committee, this is the rapporteur, Ms. Angelilli, who, can I say, organizes the discussion process. And then for every political party in the parliament, there is a shadow rapporteur, which works together with the rapporteur in organizing the committee around the directive. So these are the most important people to contact, the people who actually are involved with the topic. The rest of the committee members, as well as the rest of the European Parliament, usually doesn't care about what a certain directive does at the moment. So it's very difficult to move them. Usually they just say, well, we have that guy who works on that, and then they redirect you. So you have to start working on the people doing the decision making during a directive.
If I may, at this stage, we have this image of a parliament full of people, you know, caring and working, and it's usually the images you see on TV or in the papers. In reality, for each issue, you have a very little number, as you said, of people who are really doing the work. And it's, in a way, it's understandable. I mean, you're a member of the parliament, you cannot be as good with fishery and healthcare and education and military stuff, etc. So you have some experts, and some people also within the groups that are more influential than the others. And what we'll see, I think, along this session is that there is a need for a very strong complementation, no, it's not a word, that are very complementary, the actions within the parliament, to know every minute of every day what is exactly going on, who is going into what direction, who are the key people, and so on. And action outside of the parliament where, this is not working again, yeah? It is, okay, it's just a return here, that's good. Action outside of the parliament, where everybody, it means you, everyone, can participate into creating a political context on a specific situation. And this is, I believe, that political context we create around an issue that gives us the power to change things within the parliament. So on the shadow rapporteur that were named by Christian, it's a kind of a barbaric term, and it sounds like, you know, a rapporteur that is like a vampire or something. The shadow rapporteur is the person that for a specific political group in the European Parliament will be in charge of the dossier. The political group are the gathering of various parties in all member states. You have the Socialist and Democrat group that got all the mildly left-wing parties in Europe, for instance, and the EPP, that is the group of the Conservatives and the Christian Democrats, and so on. And so every group nominates, appoints who will be the shadow rapporteur for a specific dossier. And I've seen that before on the Telecoms Package Directive, where it's on the terrace of a bar, Place du Luxembourg, just in front of the parliament, that you have 4 assistants of 4 shadow rapporteurs of 4 political groups over beers that literally shape the text they are working on. We literally negotiated amendments over the 5th Chimay Bleu or things like that. And it's really individuals and people working with individuals that really have a dossier between the hands. And so the most early you arrive in the process, the most early you get to identify those people who work with who, what is their influence, what weight do they have in their own party, nationally, and in their group at the EU level, the more you'll be able to understand them, inform them efficiently, maybe build a trust relationship, or threaten them sometimes, and ultimately get what you want.
I think that's a very important point. Usually it's the assistants doing the work, and if the assistants are good, then the politicians don't have to do a lot of work after them. There is some difference between the political groups. The more conservative the groups are, the less the assistant has to do, actually, the less deciding he does. And the more liberal they become, the more the assistant actually does. And for the socialists, the assistants do quite a lot of work, and they are more like colleagues. I got a feeling that they're more like colleagues with their assistants. And so it's very important to understand it's not, some of the time it's important to get a parliamentarian, but sometimes it's only important to get the assistant, because as Jeremy said, they are doing the work, they are building the connections, they are talking with the assistants of the other shadow rapporteurs. And in the end, of course, it's the parliamentarian who holds his head, like who gets the blaming afterwards. But the assistants do the work. So if you get in touch with the assistants, if you get a good contact with them, if they tell you what just happens, and if you can influence them, if you can like change their way they perceive reality, actually the way they perceive the directive, or the way they perceive what you are, how can I say, trying to convey to them, then you can really change politics.
Then afterwards, Christian, I will ask you to update us on the very situation of the child whatever directive at the moment. But I think it's very important to understand that when you're, when you're ready to participate in those actions. If you understand that there's not only a need for citizen participation on those issues, but also a potentiality for success. I mean, everything you can do with helping in those campaigns against ACTA, against child blocking, everything you can do is helpful, will be helpful. We demonstrated that already in the past. But what is very important, you get to know along the time, and I think it is very similar to other areas. Maybe it is very similar with the IT industry. where you have the impression from the outside, you know, that it's a big, complex machinery that is working well and is a bit unattainable, you know, the magic and so on. And when you look under the hood, you see a little bunch of people with more or less clue, using duct tape. And yes, it's really, most of the times the assistant who do the technical job and also do the PR watch for their members. And this is something on which we need to discuss at some stage, which is the ego of a politician. And this is a very strong drive to get to influence them. But most of the time it's the assistants who do the job. And you'll be surprised on how human this can become as a contact when you are on the phone or over email or on a meeting for the second, the third time with the very same person who is bright mind of 25 years old, who lives on the internet, even if they don't know what an IP address is, they still spend the days on their face, whatever, and using spy phone, and well, that's another issue. But there are young people, they understand the internet much better than the people they work for. And if you manage to build a trust relationship with them, you win. Imagine there are 577 members in the European Parliament, right? Imagine if 2 hackers per member of the Parliament, you know, just adopted one member of the European Parliament, which is, you know, sending the first email, then calling, hello, did you receive my email? Maybe we can meet. Okay, let's meet. And just calling again and sending emails again and so on and so on and so on. We got some experts in the field here on the first row. But he's very annoying to a member of the parliament, I mean. And so it is, in the end, some very human, social work that you have to do. Well, that's the optimistic aspect of it, where you consider that there is just a lack of understanding of our issues among those people. Then, of course, there's the reality of the political situation at a given moment in the European Parliament. And in that political situation is indeed what lobby is doing what, and what interests are to serve in priority for those people. And so one key aspect is to increase the understanding by sound argumentation, that trust relationship, and constantly updated information. Another one, and I go back to this, is that notion of a political context, when you will literally threaten them. You know, you got the carrot and the stick. So this is when you use the stick. And when you make them fear that if they do not take the right decision, then they might get into trouble. I think it is raising the political cost of taking a bad decision that can be done from the outside of the parliament, when every one of us can send email, blog about it, make phone calls, and so on.
There are a few persons that we forgot to mention for influencing the decision-making in the parliament. Besides the committees that are talking about the topic, there are also the political group. Political groups are like sets of parties, and because they don't have the same name all over Europe, they congregate into groups. But you can, every time we say group, you can think party. If we say socialist group, think socialist party. So conservative group, EPP, is like a CDU in Germany, or I don't know what the party of Sarkozy is in France, UMP. So every time we say group, think about parties. So, and these groups, they have few important people which coordinate the work of a group towards a topic. And so there are the group advisors who work on the topic as well and advise the whole of the group for a topic. So they are like experts on their topic. For example, in the Greens, they have a lawyer and they have somebody into child protection and some third person who work on the access blocking. So on the different aspects of the access blocking. And when you get in touch with them, you influence what kind of information the party gets from the group advisors, because they digest reality for the political group. So actually you have, as I said in the beginning, you have to change the way they perceive reality. If we are not there, they will just have the lobby there, they will have the copyright lobby there, and all the neoconservative guys who are interested in having internet blocking, and they will be telling them what the truth is. And if we get into this process, we can change the way they perceive reality, what kind of reality actually touches them. So we have to work on the parliamentarians who are involved with the topic. We have to work with the assistants to that parliamentarians. Then there are the people working for the political groups we have to reach. And inside the groups, there are people who are like politically responsible for the work in the group, and these are the group advisors. And in a way, they are also important. They are not involved with the topic, but they are involved with the meta process of decision making. So actually, if you start to threaten, you sometimes have to threaten the group advisor. That's what I did in February last year before the vote. I told them, well, you remember Jeremy Zimmerman? Do you want to have a telecom package 2.0?
I literally had, I'm not very proud about it, but I had an ALDE group political advisor fired.
Okay.
Because she took a very bad decision on our issues, and the group took, and so this is something very important. Once again, it's social work with key people you have to locate. Once you have a trust relationship with one member of the parliament and his staff, he will do the job to identify, to tell you who is the key political advisor within the group to contact. But I think that the group logic of the European Parliament is a bit more interesting to us than the parties in a national parliament, because the group themselves are not, all of them, very much unified. There is kind of homogeneity that is more or less sensible in the different political groups that comes from the different sensibilities of the different parties in the different member states. And so it makes complex dynamics within the groups themselves. And sometimes you can steer a decision within a political group you can steer it when in national parties it's sometimes very much locked down. And for instance, on the questions related to copyright, the Spanish conservatives from the EPP are against what is usually the position of their group. Because in Spain, they're in opposition against the socialists who are serving the interests of the copyright industries. But at the same time, you have the British in the Socialist and Democrat group who are always in favor of the copyright industries because they're closer to the US and Hollywood or whatever. And so you can play within the groups with those dynamics. And what is also very interesting compared to, at least to national parliament in France, is that you don't have the usual bipartisan, either one side or the other, and that's it. Currently in the European Parliament, no group has a majority. The EPP, the Conservative, is very strong and is almost a majority by itself. The Socialist S&D group lost some of its influence. And in the middle is the ALDE group. The ALDE group is the Liberal and Democrats, whatever, group. And the ALDE group is one of the most diverse group in the European Parliament. So usually they are key to a vote. If they balance on the side of the EPP, then the EPP has it. If they balance on the side of the S&D, and a vast majority of them balance in the side of S&D, then you can win your vote. And so it is interesting because as it is extremely heterogeneous, you have liberals that are liberal libertarians, as well as liberals that are like ultra-liberal, economic liberal people, and they fight constantly within their group. So if you manage to get to the three key people in that group who have enough wingspan to influence the rest of the group, if you turn the group ALDE from one side to another, you can win a vote.
Well, actually, that was quite difficult in our directive because Ms. Malmström, the commissioner which proposed the blocking, is from the Swedish liberal group. So actually, she is a former ALDE member. And the problem was that the shadow rapporteur in Liebe also is a friend of Ms. Malmström, so she felt that she had the obligation to follow her Swedish colleague. So actually with the ALDE group, this time it was quite difficult because we had to work around the shadow rapporteur in that group in the Liebe committee. We had to actually make the group force the shadow rapporteur to take a different position. This was very, very difficult. But in the end, actually, she was quite proud of the compromise that he reached shortly before the vote.
I have two questions to ask you. One would be, what is the status of the directive and what will be the next step? And the other would be to just explain how you did your campaigning during the so far.
Okay. The first thing is, one thing before, please, if the directive comes out or if it goes to the vote, please read it. There are more bad things in it than just the access blocking. Please read it, and if you have the chance, please do some publication about it, to publicize your findings in the directive, because it has more bad things than just the blocking in it. The blocking is not compulsory anymore, it's voluntarily, and it has some legal safeguards, and you have to be informed that you are being blocked, and then that there are remedies that you can like somehow force them to unblock you, but actually doesn't say anything about the process of unblocking. And basically, this is the compromise that the European Parliament reached with the EU member states, because in fact, in the end, if they don't get compulsory blocking, all the EU member states want that their own national legislation stays the same. It's the whole directive. Actually, the whole directive is very long, but it doesn't change anything at all. Only a few key points, because in the compromise, then the member states said, well, we don't want to change that, and we don't want to change that. So in the end, it's about like 3 or 4 bad things that actually change national law, but at least blocking is not being compulsory. It's not compulsory. What would have been a more victory for us, a better victory, would have to be if we had a judge in every member state, if there is any blocking, that a judge would have to be involved in the process of blocking, not after the fact. That would have improved the situation in UK and Sweden. But this way, it's more like it stays a little like it was.
Is there a chance that this will be updated before the plenary votes by a plenary amendment or something? What is going to happen in the next steps? Do you have an amendment strategy? Maybe you don't want to disclose it at this stage. Well, what will happen next?
I actually believe in what I was told, that at the moment all the political groups are happy that they have a compromise, and there is a fear that if we overextend like what we brought the parliament to compromise on, that actually we would lose more than we'd win. So I don't know if parliamentary amendment, a plenary amendment would help at this stage.
Do you think the council will accept the parliament's compromise? No.
No, well, the compromise, what just happened now is we had the first reading in the European Parliament, so the mouse doesn't work. Anyway, we had the first reading in the Parliament, it's not finished yet. The leading committee, the Liebe committee, had a directional vote. And with that compromise reached in that vote, the Liebe committee, the rapporteur, Ms. Angelilli, went to the council, and together with the commission, they did informal trialogue. They actually did something which is not in the European Constitution and not in the Lisbon Treaty, because they are trying to reach a compromise before actually the Parliament does the decision. I think what they want to have as an outcome is that whatever comes out of the Parliament in the first reading is agreeable by the Commission and by the Council. So that's why we got something which doesn't change a lot in the end.
Well, this culture of compromise, in my way, is what is the strongest factor of inertia in getting anything done in the European Parliament. When you see this process with a very little number of people very close one to each other who are the shadow rapporteur, you feel that what they want is to get through, to work on something else and get things done. So if they can agree on something, whatever that something is, they will be happy. And so it is up to us to build that compromise whenever it's possible, or try to destroy a compromise if there is one and that it is bad for us. But it is so frustrating a long time to see that the compromise is more important than the rest and than the content of the dossier. And if we were to talk about the depressing things, we would talk about how the Council of the European Union works as a kind of democratic black hole at the center of the institution, and that always have the final word after the European Parliament. But once again, and this is what happened on the telecoms package, the European Parliament is the democratic institution in the European Union, and this is the one on which we have a hand. So on the telecoms package, we first won by destroying all the opponents' amendments and imposing our amendment that was saying the opposite by 88% of the Parliament. Then the Council does its first reading. The person in charge for the French presidency of the European Union was Pierre Sellal, who is a diplomat, who is the husband of Sylvie Forbin, the chief lobbyist of Vivendi Universal. So this guy is not our friend, and he just removed the amendment, leaving the justification box empty. And so the Council removes what was adopted by 88% of the European Parliament. We managed to have it adopted again in second reading by 88% of the Parliament, of the voters. And then it got removed again, then it went to conciliation and so on. And in the end, what matters is not the final text that has been completely washed over in a soft compromise, because it is the inevitable way we've seen so far. But the political context we built around those 2 years, when they expected to have that quickly, and they saw that everything exploded, there was literally blood on the walls, and people really, as you said, remembered those moments as very bad moments in a legislature. Now, when you tell members of the European Parliament about internet and fundamental freedoms, they're like, oh, they're afraid. And this is what we want to achieve. So, in a way, whatever is the result on the text, I'm not saying that we should not also win on the text, which is, of course, the primary objective, but also is extremely important to set that political context around those issues in order to work in the long run on those dossiers.
Okay. What is important to know is Jeremy just described the process with a third reading and with a reconciliation. No, it's the thing, but the thing is, because the process we are now in with the Child Exploitation Directive is that we are still in the first reading, and they are already trying to reach a compromise before the European Parliament votes. So actually, the European Parliament is disempowering itself. They would have the freedom to just do a vote on what they believe is right. But in the process of reaching the vote, the rapporteur is already softening the position of the parliament so it becomes acceptable for the council. So what we have to work on the long run is that the European Parliament takes a strong stance, even in opposition of the council, that the parliament starts to do their own decision, and if there is no agreement, it has to be after first reading, that in the first reading the parliament finds its own position and not a position which might be agreeable by the council. That's something what we have to work on in the long run, is that we encourage the European Parliament to take decisions which are not digestible for the council, because and if we don't do that, we will still be in these muddy waters of backroom compromises, because that is what just happened with the Child Exploitation Directive, that a lot of effort I put into certain wordings on certain points in the directive which do not have anything to do with blocking, which were important for the directive to be sensible, I believe, they were just being removed in a compromise process. So you work on the parliament for 1.5 years, and most of your work gets destroyed in some backroom decision-making with some black hole of European politics, and you don't know why it vanished, for what reason. So we have to empower the European Parliament, which is two ways. We have to cheer them up, and we have to beat them, actually.
During the Software Patents Directive, I remember the FFI organized a protest where on the back of our yellow T-shirts we had written "Power to the Parliament," which is a bit ironical, but it is true. What you describe is exactly what happened on the service directive. I think it is what happened also, in a way, it is what happened with the software patents. Well, no, it's not exactly the same. But sometimes the European Parliament likes a good fight, a good interinstitutional fight. Sometimes the Parliament likes to show its tiny muscles to the member states and say, hey, yo. And if we manage to get that, then the little muscles of the European Parliament will be useful for a political context. And it's a bit of the same with ACTA. ACTA in the end boils down to an interinstitutional relation. You will go and ask the members of the European Parliament, do you really want the European Commission and the member states to take away from you the power to decide on criminal law? Seriously? And so in the end, if you put the members of the Parliament in a corner where it is obvious that either they will be cowards or they will do what you want them to do, then you have a chance of getting it. But of course, this doesn't happen if you just go in the Parliament, talk to people and so on. You need to have set the internet on fire for it to work. You have to have every blog talking, oh, tomorrow there will be this vote. After days of briefing everyone, of making analysis, of using strong imagery and narratives to make everyone understand that they want to impose censorship and they use child protection for doing it. Well, German people in this room are used to this kind of argumentation because you had a vivid public debate on that question. But it is, once again, about the importance of working outside the parliament. And I think it is probably the most useful thing we can do, you and I, because we are very much familiar with those processes. When you look at those kind of diagrams, it's, well, you understand that people become Eurosceptics when you see such images. That's all right. And so one of the most important things we have to do is to take the knowledge we have of what's going on inside and put it in the light. Put it on the table and put it in the light so everybody can understand. Reduce it in bite-sized, actionable events. Say, this day, between that time and that time, you could call this small list of numbers to explain this point and this point and this point. So this is really about taking complexity out of that thing and enabling everyone to participate, to create political context to, in the end, obtain what we want.
One thing is there are two kinds or three kinds of work that you need. You need publicity. You need people doing some work, whether this means calling assistance or digesting information. And you need people on the ground, people who actually go to Brussels and perhaps to Strasbourg or Luxembourg and talk to people. So there are like lots of levels of involvement that you can choose for yourself. The thing is that you stop believing somebody else will do it. If you don't do it, if you don't do what you think is important, then nobody else will do it. So don't get scared by, wow, I don't want to go to Brussels, but do what you can do, like write about what you believe is right or wrong. If you have the time, call somebody, send a mail, send a letter, like snail mail, you know, the old paper thing. And yes, that's important because, you know, they have a very strong spam filter, and I would know if I was a customer of that spam filter, I would fire the admin. But no, really, it's really bad because it's called Child Exploitation Directive. And then it's like sexual abuse. So you have mails which have like child and sex in the whole. Yes, so you continuously end up in their spam filter. So like for somehow they have like a lobotomy with that topic. You can work around that, but it's not easy. So there are lots of levels of involvement, and the important thing is to not believe somebody else will do it. You have to do it. If you don't do it, nobody else will do it.
Speaking of participation, I think it might be time to open the floor to question. I just want to recall a small anecdote. Well, we were trying to get signatures for the written declaration 12 on ACTA. Written declaration is a kind of internal petition that has to be signed by half of the members of the European Parliament by hand, each of them. And we organized kind of small safaris to the European Parliament, where we got 5, 6, I think once we were 8 activists from all over Europe. We flew them, we booked big hotel rooms, and we took the bus together to be at 8:30 in front of the parliament with printed material to put on the wall and to give to the MEPs while some were knocking the doors and say, hey, don't forget to, oh, okay, I get out of here. And it worked surprisingly good. We fulfilled that written declaration, we obtained the majority of signatures, and most of the people we flew in to do that, or we trained, well, we brought in to do that, thanked us so much for giving them the opportunity to be for the first time, most of the time, in the European Parliament and have an occasion to see how it works. Who's that? Who's that idiot? And to have an occasion to see how it works and just to get started. So this is something that is quite easy to organize. We also once did a call center where people gathered and using their mobile phones or land mobile phones or whatever and sharing an Etherpad document, they were just calling for hours for the very same written declaration. Look at what we are organizing here. We are a few thousands. We got villages that require 3 trucks full of incredibly blinking stuff to build. So we can organize ourselves. We can build stuff. Building citizen action on those issues is probably different. But, I mean, we have the internet, no?
Of course.
Yeah. So I think it would be very interesting to continue this as an open discussion, to know what you think, what you may add, or what you may have as interrogation, either on the process of the directive itself or on political action in the European Parliament. What do you think?
Yeah, so we open the floor for questions regarding the work, or perhaps you have some ideas that you want to share with us. One important thing, if you ask a question, you have to say anything, please use a microphone.
And you'll just have to share this other one. Yes?
Hi. How about doing a chaos camp near Brussels, so we can all visit the parliamentarians and talk to them on important days, so some days before an election or when you think it's the right day?
There's one thing, votes usually happen in Strasbourg, and they take the word vacation really serious. They really are on vacation. It's like the parliament shuts down for 6 weeks.
But I think it may not take the form of a village with retro gaming tent and a barbecue, or involve any swimming pool at all. But yes, the kind of idea is in there. I told you about the call room we did for the written declaration 12 on ACTA. When there will be the final vote in the European Parliament for ACTA after the summer break, I really hope we can set up such call rooms and call to everybody in the hackerspaces around Europe to set their own, to transform their own hackerspace in a call center to defeat ACTA. I hope that everyone will understand how important it is. I hope that for the child directive, we can maybe do something like this if the vote is not set with the compromise. But, yeah.
Well, I am juggling the idea to bring this whole thing into the second reading. Actually, I want a second reading on the Child Exploitation Directive. And you had your amendment 134? 108? 38. 138, yes. And I'm thinking about amendment which blocks the parliamentarian process, which doesn't have to do with blocking, which has to do with some other aspect of the directive, but which might block the directive in the parliament. And if we think about it, this directive has been proposed in March 2010. before the Lisbon Treaty, it already was retabled as a framework decision. So this thing has been in the making for 2.5 years, and actually at the moment the Parliament is quite fed up with the whole directive. And I'm still juggling the idea that we could like throw this out and we get a second reading. If we do anything like that, please make sure you have a look around what we do in September.
Hey there, Jeremy, you said something interesting before. You said that people might become Eurosceptics by looking at those diagrams. How is it that you're not a Eurosceptic? Are you a Eurosceptic after having to deal with all this kind of bullshit?
So that was the short answer. The long would be that I will not wait for institutions to be as I would think they would be perfectly functioning to try and hack them. And that I got some examples already that we can move the lines, make things change. I'm convinced of that. I have evidence. It's here in my pocket. You want to see it? No, seriously, I have evidence that we can change things. And those issues are too important. When we are talking of the open nature of the internet, it's the infrastructure for the future of our societies that may be either free or under control. It's crucial for whatever happens. So I personally feel that I have the duty to try and do something, whatever happens. Then if you ask me if I would design the European institutions the way as they are, with a council that is both a co-legislator and the sum of executive branches, I would tell you that is sound contrary to the principle of separation of powers and may not fly. But that's another debate.
A question from the internet: is introducing direct democracy on your agenda?
I don't think it means anything. I mean, there are nice experimentations with liquid whatever that, in my view, didn't produce anything impressive
I think
yet.
it's rather the concept than the tool.
Well, I think it's a bit of a chicken and an egg situation. If you consider that the institutions are not working well, that, for instance, let's just use this as a use case, that, for instance, the members of the European Parliament listen too much to the corporate lobbies instead of to the citizens. Maybe it's also because there is not enough citizens to go and talk to them. So maybe the representative democracy we have today, and that seems broken, can be at least a little bit fixed by putting a bit more pressure on that very same representation, by putting strong accountability on the way that representation is used day by day, and not only when you're asked to cast a vote after watching a few advertisements on TV. So maybe we can, I'm not saying we can fix representative democracy, but maybe we can try to use it a bit more efficiently, waiting to find something else.
Thanks.
Just my personal opinion for the question that has just been raised. You say direct democracy is kind of empty because I believe it can be used it can be also used by the powerful. As we can see, if you see the yellow press can direct people for doing campaigning. They do it, like RTL did in Germany. They did from a Presserat, they did, how can I say, Rüge. They were told that they did something bad, and then they told their customers to call them and tell them that was okay. So their direct democracy also works the other way around, and I'm not so sure that if we introduce something like that, that the intelligent people will win.
Well, yes, it should be tested before being put in production. Huh? Who does that anyway?
Yes.
Hey, Jeremy, one question. You mentioned about carrots and sticks. Can you quickly and concisely describe some of what the carrots and the sticks are?
Yes. Well, actually, usually we cannot afford the carrots. The carrots Usually could be invitation to dinner or to a launch party of the new movie by those great industries that may be about to die very soon because of the internet. It could be helping you organize an event in the European Parliament or somewhere else, providing you with information. It could be helping you to appear in proper media, connecting you with people who will help you, or having just good press go around you when you take a decision that is conform to what I want. The stick. The stick is the opposite. It's the bad press they can get if they don't do what you want from them. It's what will appear when they Google themselves all day long and they begin to see angry blogs of people living in their area of election saying, oh, this guy is a rah, 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 and I will rah, 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 again. This is about increasing the political cost of taking the bad decision, as I said earlier. And it's directed towards the reptilian brain of a politician that is constantly thinking about the re-election. You know, it's one of the most central parts of the brain of a politician. And seriously, it's something about ego. We built this website called Political Memory. Version 2.0 is being developed, and we need some Python and Django and data porn people. With political memory, we make 1 page per member of the European Parliament, and we record their votes, and we allow we score their votes according to recommendations. And for the members of the Parliament who are central to our issues, when you type their name on a very notorious search engine, the first link is the European Parliament, the second is their website, the third is Wikipedia, and the fourth is political memory, which is a page that may say 17 out of 100 is ranked number 600 whatever out of 700 something, etc., etc., etc. And in the process of the redesign, we're currently working on, you know, red boo and green yes and things like that that would make it even more explicit. So this is basically good PR, bad PR, and yeah, waiting in one way or another towards a re-election.
Well, actually, it's not only carrots and sticks. They are still human beings, and they can change their mind. That's what I have been working on last year. It's like with a personal confrontation, with a human being. The thing is for them, you know, if they get a call, okay. If they get 100 call, okay. But if you see a actual person who took the hassle to go to Brussels, first get an appointment, then go to Brussels, and then sit in front of them for 20 minutes, then they might believe that what you are trying to convey to them actually is important. If a person actually turns up for some topic, that must be important. And then you get the chance to actually find out why they believe certain things might be a good idea. And that way you find out how the other side thinks, and you might be able to find the loophole, you find the reason why their thinking is wrong, and perhaps you are nice enough that you can explain them why their thinking is wrong. So it's not only sticks and carrots, but it's also exchange, communication, which is really important. So let's say even if political memory does like boo, it's important that if you call that person, it's still a human being, it's not an asshole, it's just he has a different opinion, and he might be just misinformed. One thing you said, well, actually this few politicians want to be re-elected. For some politicians, this seems to be a career path to become a lobbyist afterwards. So it's very strange. They become a politician to get the connections to become a lobbyist working on the European Parliament afterwards. And they are selling their connections. That is a different business model.
Okay. I have one question from Progress Bar Hackerspace, Slovakia. I would like to ask, you mentioned brain of politicians, and you mentioned this reporters meeting in the restaurant drinking beer in front of the European Parliament. And I would like to ask whether some of you succeeded to get drunk with one of these people, or smoke a joint, or let's say modify consciousness, or I mean to approach them on a very human, let's say even like chemical level, seduce them. And if this information is confidential, I would just like to ask whether you consider this kind of direct action as a legitimate means to achieve your activist goals.
First of all, I don't see what you're talking about. Second of all, yes, you would be surprised on how human those people are. They even have sex together. You know, they go to the toilet, they eat, and no, you really see at some stages, and it's even disturbing to myself. I became friend with some of the assistants, and I won't tell you about the rest. But it's normal that no. Afterwards, when it's off the record. But in the end, it's human beings. And it's normal that human beings working together, meeting together at some point become closer. So I encourage you to take your small suitcase full of nice things you want to share and just try it.
Okay. Other questions? I think we want to know whether sex, drugs, or rock and roll work best in
Well,
this circumstance.
you know, if you get to have a dinner with a parliamentarian, you got quite far, actually. Yes, if you can really, if you get to have a dinner with somebody from the parliament, then you are into the inner circle in a way. I think if you just meet them on a personal level, if you manage to meet them more than once, then you actually have a relationship. If you get a second appointment, then you know you didn't do it wrong.
Everyone, yes. Ready, right? So there's one back here.
Yeah, hi, I'm Stefan from the FFI, and I think there's a huge misbalance between the people of us, like being in Brussels and doing lobbying, and the people on the other side. And my question is, do you have any idea how to increase the number of good people doing the information of the parliamentarians? Thank you.
Well, for Germany, I would have an answer. At the moment, I think the German problem is funding. We have to fund people, we have to trust people, so we give them the money to go to Brussels. This is what I see with Germany. Actually, I believe the way France does it with La Quadrature is quite luxury. It's, I would like to have something like EDRI in Germany. I'm a little sad that Digitale Gesellschaft is not a Verband, it's not a union of other unions. It's just a private union of a few people. Because the thing about EDRI is an organization of organizations. It's a lot stronger than just an organization of people. And we should have something which sends people to Brussels regularly. So there has to be the funding, we have to identify the people who are able to do the work, and we have to get them there.
I will add something on that may sound very un-German to some, but with La Quadrature du Net, right from the beginning, we did that choice to have a non-structure, not to care at all about structural issue. We have no member, no president, no board meeting, no whatever. And I believe that in the end, it is individual action that matters. Whatever the structure, whatever the brand name, whatever your member or this or that, it's the sum of individuals. We can be running in the corridors of the parliament one marathon each day. It wouldn't change anything if there weren't for dozens, hundreds, or thousands of people doing the job outside. And I think that, of course, this question of how we manage to do it is important, and we have a role to play in that. But it's about sharing infrastructure and sharing knowledge. It's about what we all know how to do and practice every day, whether it's with developing free software or contributing to Wikipedia or OpenStreetMap or whatever. So get an IRC channel, get a mailing list, get a wiki, and think of the structure afterwards. Or, yeah.
Yes, it's like get involved.
Well, it is 10 p.m., so I think we'll end this session. Everyone go have a biological break, get a drink, get a snack. The next session in this room is at 10:30, also in the next room at 10:30. I'd like to thank our speakers very, very much. Thank you, and see you later.